Well, this is good, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, what are we, 2 weeks after the Aprilia launch? And we're sat in my living room with a broken leg.
And a broken arm.
And a broken arm, yeah. Not doing very well, are we? What a strong team.
And you look high as...
But yeah, I've just topped my tramadol intake. Ladies and gents, welcome to Italy. But more importantly, welcome to this, because this is a bike I've been waiting absolutely ages to get my hands on. It is, of course, Aprilia's all-new RS660. So what is it? Well, as the name would suggest, it's got a 660cc engine. It's an inline parallel twin, which is effectively the front two cylinders off the RSV4 1100, just with a different cylinder head and a longer stroke. If you ask me, that gets my vote, because if this is half as good as an RSV4 1100, then I think we're onto a winner. So performance-wise, there is 100 horsepower, or that's what Aprilia is saying. It's probably a little bit less than that by the time you get to the back wheel. It's got adjustable suspension, upside-down forks. It's got Brembo brakes. Although the suspension isn't Öhlins, and the brakes, yeah, the Brembo, but the calipers do look a little bit OEM spec, so I'm not going to get a woody about that just yet. Electronics-wise, that's where Aprilia have really gone to town with this bike. It's got everything. It's got LED lights. It's got a TFT dash. It's got cornering ABS. It's got all of the Aprilia performance ride control modes that you see on the other bikes, traction control, cruise control, all them bits and pieces. It's got a quick shifter and a blipper, so it really does have a lot of spec. And price-wise, Aprilia didn't tell us how much this was going to cost until we got here. So I sat on the plane and did the sums in my head and thought to myself, how much can a bike with 100 horsepower really be worth? 7 grand, 10 grand, I thought, somewhere in that region. But then I thought to myself, it's an Aprilia, so it'll be a bit more than that. Anyway, the price for this bike is £10,149. Now, if you order one before the new year, I believe, then they'll pay the first registration fee and road tax. So really, it's a 10 grand bike. There's a lot of bike there for 10 grand. Is it worth 10 grand? Well, possibly. I'm not sure yet, because we've not done enough miles on it. But the plan is to go out, do some more miles, see how fast it is, see if it's worth 10 grand. So without any more ado, I'm going to go get my helmet. Are we going? Come on, you buggers. I tell you what, the clutch is lovely and light, which is handy because this is the first time I've ridden a bike since I broke this wrist. What's also handy, considering I have a broken wrist, is this bike comes with a shifter and blipper, which is also always nice. Oh, lovely this. Yeah, so I was up a little bit late, and I ended up having to ride one of these yellow bikes. Now, we've decided that, I think that this colour's called Acid Gold. We've decided that the designers must have been on acid when they chose this paint out. I had a chat with one of them last night over dinner, and he said he actually quite liked it. And he said, oh yeah, it's 3 layers of paint, it's this, that and the other. And he said, look, we wanted to do something a little bit different, which I get. And he said, normally Aprilia's, there's loads of stickers and there's all different colours and they're a little bit exciting. And he said we wanted to do something a bit more plain, a bit more sort of, one block colour. And they said every other block colour's kind of taken. If they was to do it all red, it'd look like a Ducati. If they was to do it all blue, it'd look like a Yamaha, So they wanted something different enough to stand out, and they've certainly found something different. I mean, look at it. Looks like something someone's coughed up. Well, first impressions of this bike, I'm quite happy. It's dead comfortable. The seat's really soft. In fact, the shock's quite soft as well. But yeah, the seat's soft, everything's plush and lovely. The ride today, by all accounts, is going to take us up into the mountains in the Alps, the sort of the bottom of the Alps, which is always nice. The Alps are probably my favourite place in the world, certainly in Europe, to ride a bike, whether you're in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, France, Italy, beautiful, beautiful scenery and awesome roads as well. So it looks like we're just about to start riding into the mountains a little bit more now, which is nice. Oh, here we go, look. Go on, son. Tell you what, this motor is a bit of a peach. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's no RSV4, but that shifter and blipper's nice as well, it really works. Just unsure how much wildlife turd there is on the road surface way up there at the minute. It looks to be a little bit. Not sure if that is wildlife turd or something else. Someone asked, has it got a fuel gauge? Well, yes, it is up there. Yes, it does have a fuel gauge. Somebody also asked where it revs to, so we'll find out in a sec. Shall we just drop back a little? Oh, another hairpin, look at this. We'll do a rev limit test, shall we? 11,500 I make that. Oh, he's letting me through, good lad. We were also asked, does it wheelie? Well, they've said to us, can we not wheelie these bikes? Or they said, you know, please will you not do any big wheelies on these bikes? So I'll make sure I don't do any big wheelies. Ah, you got to watch these things, look. Them things. Buggers for it out here. They love a speed camera. It started. You can let this bike rev, you know, it does want to sing, it's good. It's not one of them things that's, you know, just all about low-end torque. It has got a nice little punch of torque, but it's still... Hey, oh, fucking hell, I've dropped out of gear here, look. That's not the best when you're going up to a corner. Yeah, you're a long way from getting your knee down yet, love. Try a bit harder than that, so... Oh, fuck me, sideways. We've done our shakedown. We've warmed up. The ground's got a bit warmer. The engine's got a bit warmer. The tyres aren't really hot, but I've got that on the right hand, of course I have. Now, I think it's time we gave it some. Why won't it start? Stands down. It's got the RSV4 look about it. It's got a bit of a sort of an RSV4 boom to the sound. Ah, I think that sounds cracking for a small bike. Now the 660 has got quite a up. I keep flicking, that's something I'm doing. I keep flicking the high beam on with my finger. I think I'm reaching for the clutch and I'm knocking the high beam on. Other than that, I do like this arrangement. It's better than, I prefer it to the RSV4 and the Tuono. You've got like a soft sort of joystick thing on the bigger bikes that I'm not keen on. I do like the flappy paddles you get on the big bikes. You don't get them on this. You work the cruise control with that button there. Traction control, you can, obviously that can be adjusted. Engine braking control, that can be adjusted. We've got it in individual mode now. It does do good stoppies. We just stopped for a piss and a smoke and a this, that and the other, and I managed to blag myself a black bike, which I'm much happier about. I couldn't get used to that yellow. What a beautiful world we live in, and what a beautiful noise this motorbike makes. Oh, jizz fest. And that's with a standard exhaust system on as well, which is a little bit pissy. If you were to put the racing Acroprobic system on, that's going to be a proper jizz fest. Like an explosion in a wallpaper paste factory. No, don't get off there, son. Bed them new knee sliders in. Oh, look at this. Look at that bastard. Hey? You beauty. Who puts the mum and dad on the back of the truck? Why have they built this bike? Well, Aprilia were telling us last night that
there's a big gap, a chasm in fact, in their sports bike lineup between the small bikes for the kids, the RS125s and stuff, and then the big bikes for the grown-ups, RSV4s and what have you. So they wanted something in between, so this kind of fits perfectly. It's the bike that you could feasibly go from RS125 to 660, and then, you know, a bit more experience, your testicles have grown a little bit bigger, get yourself an RSV4, so it kind of makes sense. It is in a lot of senses of the word, half an RSV4. It's roughly half the price, roughly half the engine, you know, it's a lot lighter, but it's not half the fun. Wanker! Fucking shit. Ah, the coppers are out. I've got a brand new combine harvester and I'll give you the key. Come on now, let's get together in perfect harmony. I've got 20 acres and you've got 43. Now I've got a brand new combine harvester and I'll give you the... Ah, you fucking slags. Fucking hell, was that my front tyre or was his back tyre? Jesus Christ, that frightened me. Brakes are nice, brakes work really well, and the the ABS can be turned on level 1. It's, you know, it's as good as turned off. You can do skids, you can do stoppies. I think it, because I'm upright, it lets me hammer the brakes quite hard with the cornering ABS system. If I was at whatever lean, fucking Jesus, if I was at whatever lean angle, the ABS would kick in a bit more. I'm struggling with wheelies a little bit, to be perfectly honest. I think I broke my wrist a few months ago, and it's not really, it's healed, but it's not back to full strength. And to do a wheelie on these, you've got to give it a bit of a yank. It's a bit of a yanker, and I've not got the strength to yank it as vigorously as I might like to. Need to do more yanking. Note to self: more yanking needed. Well, that's about it, ladies and gents. We're approaching a hotel after a good long day in the saddle on the old RS660, and I'll tell you what, I've been pretty impressed by it. It's not a super sport bike, but it's not a happy shopper either. It really is somewhere in between. It's fast. Okay, it's not super fast, but it's fast enough. It's fast enough for the type of riding most people are going to want to do on this type of bike. I never felt like I needed a bit more power. It's always nice to have more power, isn't it? More's always nice, but for the price, you get loads of tech. You get a bike. What are you shouting at? Yeah, for the price, you get loads of tech. You get a bike that is comfortable, lovely and light, really, you know, really agile and flickable. You can just put it wherever you want it, and the technology and stuff on it really does. It makes it feel like a more expensive bike than a bike that costs, what, 10,149 quid. If I was going to make a couple of improvements, I would probably put a steering damper on it. Sometimes the steering just feels a little bit light and a little bit wappy, particularly when you're trying to do wheelies. It definitely could do with some better suspension. It helps stiffening this up, I think. But yeah, it is budget suspension, and it feels like budget suspension, so I'd definitely I'd definitely put proper suspension on if I had one of these bikes. If I had, you know, a 10 grand-ish budget and I was looking for a new bike, and I wanted something that was gonna be fast enough that I could keep up with my mates on super sport bikes, and I wanted something comfortable enough and practical enough that I could commute to work, you know, short rides, long rides, then yeah, I genuinely think this would be quite high on the old shortlist. But I would not have the yellow one.
apologies for the delay, but obviously, as you can see, there was a minor,
Yeah.
or there was a major trauma.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'd just like to point out that it wasn't done on the Aprilia. Now, there was a lot of talk pre-launch, Aprilia, when they launched the bike initially, that they didn't want it to be put up against an R6 or a ZX6. You know, this isn't a proper track-focused super sports weapon, like a lot of people still are assuming it is.
The numbers alone, looking at the spec sheet, it hasn't got what it takes to be really performance-wise up there with the super sport bikes, like you mentioned. But then at the same time, it seemed to be a big step up from the likes of, the CBR 650Rs,
Yeah.
Ninja 650s, that sort of
SVs,
SVs.
the
yeah.
lightweight bikes. So this is more of a Gucci happy shopper.
Yeah, but it's a big step up from all them happy shoppers in almost every way. It's faster. It's got a lot more tech. It's mega light. You know, it's a proper lightweight bike, and it feels lightweight when you're riding it. And the more I rode it, the more I thought, actually, if you went out for a ride with your mates on super sports bikes, if you're half handy on a bike, you'd keep up with them. You know,
Especially on the road. I mean,
on the road, yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned this tech. I mean, and you mentioned it in the intro, there's lots of tech in this beauty. It's a 6-axis IMU.
Yeah.
You know, you could question whether the bike needs 8 levels of traction control for a bike like this.
Yeah.
But like I said, there's lots of tech. And you know, interestingly, the Aprilia RSV4, that is the area that lets the bike down massively. The rest of the bike is amazing and would be class leading if it wasn't for the electronics. So is that the case? You know, does it feel crude?
No, I think that it's almost the opposite with this bike. I think the electronics are quite a big selling point for it because it's got so much more electronics and so much more advanced electronics than anything else in that category. Aprilia are actually telling us that the electronic system is more advanced than the RSV4.
We'd hope so.
You would hope so, yeah.
Yeah.
Like you said though, when you've only got 100 brake horsepower, 8 levels of traction control, it's unnecessary. Engine braking control, you know, that you can alter. You've got 3 rider modes for the road and then another 2 rider modes for the track. It seems to me like overkill. You know, if I had a budget to develop a bike, that's not what I would spend all the budget on. But I spoke to the guys at Aprilia about this, and they said buying a bike these days is for a lot of people a bit like buying a phone. They want it to have all of the tech. They want it to have, you know, an 18,000 megapixel camera or 18 levels of traction control. Most people don't need or use a lot of that tech, whether it's the phone, the car, the bike. So it's just nice having it, isn't it?
And go back to this place in the market for this bike. You kind of hope really at 10 grand, I guess why some people are pitching it against the R6 and the ZX6 is because it costs that much.
Yeah.
But it's almost in a class of its own, really, isn't it?
It is in a class of its own, yeah. It's not performance-wise, it hasn't got the legs of a super sport bike, but electronics-wise, it tears them a new arsehole. So that's where Aprilia have obviously spent the design budget and the development budget on the electronics. Whether it needs it is another question.
I mean, I suppose you're an experienced rider. I think you've got to look for, you know, the what they're trying to do is get newer riders and riders that couldn't afford an Aprilia beforehand.
Yeah, exactly.
Trying to get them onto a bike, and you could argue that, you know, this technology might save them. I mean, we both know that TC doesn't save high sides.
No.
Simple as.
Yeah.
But you know.
But to be fair, I also think it's the kind of a bike that at the other end of the spectrum, you know, you're 50 years old and you can't physically get on a sports bike anymore. You're too old and worn out. It's actually a bike that I think they'd be happy riding it as well. It's a little bit more comfortable, and you know, if you've had a super bike, a modern super bike with all the tech, even if you moved on to something with half the power, you'd probably still want all that tech, wouldn't you? Just because you've got used to it on a bigger, faster, more techy bike.
Yeah.
So, you know, in that respect, maybe the electronics have been worth it. For my money, I would have spent that extra cash on suspension.
I was going to say, that's a good point. That suspension, that's a really interesting point because, you know, I know some people are going to moan. Well, a lot of people are going to moan. It's 10 grand. It's far too much money. It's not free. But that price point, you're not going to have Gucci. Not going to have amazing suspension.
No.
Can you tell on the road?
Yeah.
That's the bit that lets it down, is it?
Yeah. The suspension lets it down. It's. But again, for an unexperienced rider, who maybe isn't going to be trying to ride it the way that we would maybe try and ride it, it's probably okay.
Is it a bit bouncy and a bit saggy?
It's soft and bouncy, yeah.
Like a set of Spaniels is.
Yeah, it's not. It's not racing suspension, and you notice it straight away. And it's directly mounted, and it does look a bit pissy and a bit small. The suspension definitely lets the package down, and for me, I would bin all the trick electronics off for the sake of proper suspension. But then the bike probably isn't aimed at someone like me.
No, true.
So it's
swings and roundabouts.
Swings and roundabouts, mate. Yeah.
Now it looks kind of like a pretty sweet, nimble bike.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there has to be some sort of compromise because, as you say, it's not a super sport bike, but it turns pretty nice. I mean, where do the flaws sort of come in as the harder you ride it?
Yeah, well, it at a reasonably sedate pace, it's a fantastic handling bike because it's so light.
Yeah.
And when you're not pulling and pushing it too much, the suspension can cope.
Yeah.
The brakes are really good. Again, probably because it's so light, you can get the thing stopped really quick. You've got a decent amount of ground clearance when you want to start leaning it over. It's really when you start pushing that extra little bit that braking a bit harder. It's quite easy to bottom the forks out.
Is it?
Yeah.
You're not even that heavy, are you?
well.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it depends who I'm sat next to. You can bottom the forks out, and you can. I probably wasn't bottoming the shock out, but I think what happened, because the shock's soft, you kind of just seem to use a lot of the travel really easily, and it makes for a bike that it doesn't feel planted. But again, that's probably only when you start riding it
like it's not supposed to be ridden.
Like it's not supposed to be ridden. Yeah. When you ride it like a proper sports bike, that's when the flaws start to appear. When you ride it, just that step back, which is probably the way that the guys that I mentioned before, the younger guys coming up that maybe aren't mega experienced, or the older guys that have done sports bikes and done the daft riding.
You say that though, it's a really intriguing bike. I think for a lot of reasons. It's the first Aprilia middleweight. It's a looker. It's exciting. It's got the tech. It sounds good. It's got all the ingredients to make it a really interesting bike. And for the road, we both know that 200 horsepower isn't viable anymore. And that even for us, I think it is a prospect for a lot of people.
So. Definitely. Well, I'll tell you an interesting story. When I got back from the launch, a mate of mine saying I'd been on the launch and ridden the RS660, and he texted me and he said, "Is it worth selling my Triumph Street Triple and getting one of these Aprilia RS660s?" And it sort of put me on the spot a little bit, because I hadn't really thought about that bike as been a proper rival to the 660. And when I think about it, it probably is. So I will mention he has the R rather than the RS, so it's not the trick suspension, but it's still a decent bike. The reason he texted me was because he wanted something a bit sportier. And in actual fact, what that probably means is he wants something that looks a bit sportier. And the Aprilia definitely looks sportier, and I think they're close enough performance-wise. The Triumph is a bit quicker, but they're close enough performance-wise that actually, to really say which is better, I think you'd need to back them.
It's interesting, because I know, first of all, when Aprilia stated, or they declared the competition, you go, it's going to absolutely annihilate them.
Yeah.
It really annihilate everything in that sort of segment. But then when you look at it, there's bikes like the Street Triple, which are, they haven't got fairings, so Aprilia go, well, it's not a direct rival.
Yeah.
In fact, it is. Same price, similar performance.
Yeah, exactly, And these days, the fact whether something's got a fairing or not, it's irrelevant to a lot of people, isn't it? They don't. 10, 20 years ago, it had to be a sports bike, didn't it? Otherwise, there was something wrong with you. Whereas now, if you've got a Tuono, you can still be my mate. So.
And talking of Tuonos, I heard a little rumour there might be a 660 Tuono.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk of that on the launch. 660 Tuono, so
that'll be good fun.
Yeah, I think it will. Yeah,
that'll probably suit the engine and the chassis more than an RS. So.
And again, it's there's a bigger sort of middleweight nakeds category that slots into.
Yeah.
You know, MT-07s, 890 Dukes. You know, that's going to be a good addition to
definitely
to that category.
Yeah. So the $1 million question, and the question on everyone's lips is, would you buy one?
For the road, as a road bike, I probably wouldn't just yet, because I'm expecting at some stage there to be a factory version,
Yeah.
you know, with a bit of carbon fibre and
Yeah.
an exhaust and better suspension. But now they've changed the rules for the TT, the lightweight class at the TT.
That's a good point, my son. That's a good point, Michael. Well done.
Now this is going to be an absolute weapon in that class. It's going to, you know, even in stock trim, it'd be, you know, without doing anything to the engine, it'd be competitive. So I have already started making inroads to try and get hold of one of these for the TT.
I mean, we've got MT-07s.
Yeah.
Obviously the Aprilia.
Yeah.
And the SVs and the Kawasaki's can be bigger bore and bigger stroke. Is that right?
Yeah. The rules are a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
You can bore them out or stroke them, I believe.
Yeah.
If they're not over 650 as standard, but if they are, then you can't. I'm not entirely sure.
No,
It's complicated, but
the new rules are exciting. It's going to make this class definitely. It's going to really give it the kick up the arse it needs.
Yeah. So that's if I can make that happen, that's going to be it's going to be good fun. Have a lot of laughs.
Watch this space.